Wouldn't it be great if we could just ride our bikes all the time and never have to fix them and never have to do any routine maintenance to them? Well, as I recently found out, even when you're pushing your luck, there's still gonna be little bits and pieces that you have to do. Well, as some of you may know, I haven't ridden this bike much lately. I lent him out to a friend for about a month, and then I got him back for a few days and lent him out again to the same friend for about another month. Only when I got him back, he just didn't feel right. There was just something about the bike. He didn't feel like my bike. So I decided to have a look at him, try and find out what's wrong with him, you know, why is he feeling a little bit odd. And normally when you're trying to trace a problem on a vehicle, you normally have to check a dozen things before you find out what's actually wrong. But actually in this case, it was the very first thing I checked. He didn't feel right when I was riding him, so I decided let's check the tyre pressures. Now admittedly, I hadn't checked the tyre pressures in quite some time. I knew it wouldn't be anything major because I look after this bike and my friend looked after this bike, but neither one of us had checked his tyre pressures. So I checked his front. He's meant to have 25 psi, he had 20, nothing major there. Checked the rear, meant to have 29, and he had about 8. Bloody 8 psi. I mean, that'll do it. If you haven't checked your tyre pressures lately, folks, get them checked. And the funny thing is, not only was the tyre pressure at the back on 8 psi, but when I lent this bike to my mate, I had a good inch of chicken strips on my rear tyre, and my friend managed to, he likes to lean a bike, he does. He pretty much got rid of my chicken strips. I don't have chicken strips now, I just have this little slither. And he did all of that whilst on 8 psi. But I don't mind. Like I say, I've got little slithers now, which if anyone asks, of course, that was all my doing, yeah? So check your tyre pressures, folks, and whilst you're at it, check your chain as well. I've let my chain on this bike get pretty bad for the purpose of this video, but also to demonstrate exactly what happens in the winter weather if you don't look after your chain. Now, Laren's chain is lovely and gold and clean, and it would take a long time for it to go bad, but the chain on this bike looks really nice when it's cleaned and lubricated, looks lovely and black, but the slightest bit of wet weather on this chain and it turns this lovely shade of orange. So I need to get home and get this chain cleaned and lubricated. Nice little bit of slow control there. Nice little bit of Mod 1 slow control. And whilst I'm taking care of the chain, I'm going to lubricate a few other things. That was very nice of him. A little thumbs up there. Yes, I'm going to lubricate a couple of other things. I would suggest that you lubricate your brake and clutch levers, because otherwise they can start squeaking. Yep, it's squeaking, which is very annoying. But also just lubricate the ends of your cables as well. If you don't, they can go crusty and break, and that happened with little Lexi, and she promptly broke down. So yeah, get those lubricated, and whilst you've got your WD-40 or whatever you're using in hand, I'd suggest that you check and lubricate your kickstand, because because if you don't, it's going to get crusty and mucked up, and it's just not going to work properly. It's not going to extend properly, it's not going to retract fully, and your bike's not going to hold themselves up if your kickstand's not fully down. And the last thing you want to do is ride off with a kickstand that's not fully up. So I'd suggest you get that lubricated. Now, another thing that I'm going to check later on today, and you don't necessarily have to do this every week, but again, in the winter weather it makes sense. Check your oil level. On this particular bike, I don't like the arrangement, I'll be honest. The silly little dipstick that you have, you're meant to unscrew it, clean it, place it back on the engine, and it's meant to tell you how much oil you've got, and it does kind of work, but depending on whether you have the marks facing upwards or downwards, you do get two different readings. I've always had the markers pointing upwards, and that's always served me well. And whilst I'm at it, I'm going to check my coolant, and that one is very important in this weather. If you are riding around, driving around, it isn't uncommon to smell other people's coolant. And on this particular bike, it's pretty easy. You just have a look behind the wheel, you'll see the expansion tank. You may have to shine a light on it depending on the state of your coolant. If you've got a nice colourful coolant, if you've got a nice red coolant, it typically tends to be a lot easier to check your coolant level. And another thing that I like to keep an eye on, not necessarily a weekly check, but it doesn't hurt, I like to keep an eye on my brake fluid level, which again on this particular bike isn't easy. On the front we have a sealed reservoir, we do have a little inspection window on the side of it, and I've seen these inspection windows on various components on various bikes and they work really well, but I have to say, for the front brake fluid reservoir on this bike, that little inspection window is absolutely useless. It only works if you've got the lid off and the diaphragm inside is removed, and then it works, and then it'll work fine. But if it's all in one piece, it doesn't work. It's just black. I rebuilt this master cylinder a couple of years back, new seals, painted it, etc., and I masked up that little window there. I may as well have not bothered. I may as well have painted it. I won't see any less through that window if I'd have painted it. So really it needs a new diaphragm because it leaks. It could do with being repainted. If I'm honest, I'm probably just gonna replace it with one from an R6. It's a much better looking arrangement. The rear brake fluid reservoir is so much easier because there's the level. It's as easy as that. It's as simple as that. Come on, Yamaha, why didn't you have a similar arrangement on the front? I'm due a brake fluid change. In fact, I'm overdue on the back. I rebuilt the master cylinder on the front in August 2021. They say change your brake fluid every 2 years. Very few people, I doubt many people would actually do that, but that was just over 2 years ago. Brake fluid in the rear, I'll admit, I've never changed it. I've always kept an eye on its level, but I've never changed it, so that'll be getting changed. And whilst I'm at it, I'm going to be changing these clips because they're showing their age, and yeah, I can't be dealing with rusty clips on my bike. And I know that a lot of these checks are pretty obvious, but I bet a lot of people don't do them. And then there's people like me who will do these checks regularly, but then before you know it, life takes over and you've got yourself an orange chain. So let's get home and get those checks done and clean that damn chain.